This is Lee Odin, behind the camera of course, at Search Engine Strategies Hong Kong, and with me I have Brent Payne from Tribune. Brent is an accomplished in-house SEO working with the Tribune company, and what are some of the publications part of the Tribune family, Brent?
Probably, well, our largest is definitely LA Times, and we have a number of newspapers. So we'll have Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun, Orlando Sentinel, Sun Sentinel, all the way down to Daily Press, Current, etc. Some of our smaller publications.
And what's your official title, and what do you do there?
So officially I'm the SEO director for Tribune, which means I am responsible for all SEO strategy and tactics for all of our newspaper sites, our broadcast sites. We even have partners now that are on our same content management system. I will work with them as well. They have offices as far out and remote as Alaska, right? So they have publications up there. So I'll work with them, and trying to get that whole network to work together as one entity is one of the greater struggles I get to deal with.
So, how does it work in terms of SEO and a news publisher and journalists? I mean, I've been talking a lot in the PR industry about how people should optimize their news so journalists find it, but in the course of doing that, finding people like yourself are creating some really valuable resources for journalists and drawing attention to the need for them to understand what people are searching for as they write online titles and use it, create online copy. So
absolutely. Tell
us about what you're doing in that space, and how does that work?
Well, I usually train the journalists about once a year, once every 6 months. And what that means is I will go out to every single newsroom within Tribune, all the newspapers, all the broadcast sites, and I will talk to them about the basics of SEO. Popularity, authority, relevance, and inside of relevance, the finer details of on-page, off-page, URL structure, the anchor text, and how that plays into everything. And I'll explain this to them, and I try and do it in a way that it starts off from the basics and kind of progresses into what they need for their own beat, if you would, right? So I'll use Google Trends, I'll use Google Insights for search. One of the and you have to stay interesting throughout these, right? Because it's a really dry topic, right? A lot of these journalists have been forced to show up to these meetings. They're not really excited about it, right? And so you can tell. Usually in the first few sessions of each location, the more excited people are there, because they really wanted to latch on, so they signed up right away. And then towards the last few sessions of when you're there, it's kind of the old curmudgeons, right? They're usually, unfortunately, some of our best writers, Pulitzer Prize winners, etc. And you do get some reactions like, well, why do I need this? And is it even making any money? And all these other things. But yeah, you just got to work your way through it. And I talk about how you need to use social media to draw in additional links, etc. Teach you about the link structures and kind of the history of search engines and how things have changed with Google, and how you need to always focus on writing good quality content, but make sure that you don't speak in some weird language, that the user won't necessarily be searching for, right? Example was a Hudson River plane crash. We changed that headline from 2 Wings and a Prayer on LA Times to Plane Crash Hudson River, right? And Marshall Simmons, a colleague, or well, a friend of mine, if you would, at New York Times, has mentioned publicly that they kept a topic of, what was the topic? Oh, pilot makes icy plunge, right? And that's just a really good example to be able to show to some of the newsrooms that, pilot makes icy plunge only generated X number of views from New York Times, and they were frustrated that they weren't on that first page. Had we stuck with 2 Wings and a Prayer, we would have been not doing so well either, right?
Right.
So making those changes. So it's interesting.
So it's kind of this intersection of being creative, as one would be, and as a journalist, you want to sometimes use puns and be clever or ironic and that sort of thing, but at the same time being thoughtful about what customers are searching for, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
It's not just going after search traffic. It's that's not the end. That's a proxy. It's actually getting that search traffic, and then actually, you're making a promise by the language you use, and when people click through, they need to be satisfied. Otherwise, they're not going to share it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned to a lot of the journalists, I'm like, you guys have been trained for years in journalism school, or through the decade that you've been a journalist, or 2 decades you've been a journalist, how to write those witty, interesting pun headlines, right? Now start looking at Google Trends every hour of the day. right? Not because there's going to be something in there you can write about, but because you'll learn how people search. And once you learn how people search, that's how you can write the best headlines, right? It's not that we know immediately what we need to put in there. It's that we know that before, when celebrities die, it's always their name, dead, right? So when Michael Jackson died, we knew it was Michael Jackson dead before Google Trends even told us, right? Same thing with Bernie Mac and all these other people, right? So you've got to, as a journalist, you have to retrain yourself, right? That, okay, this is what I do for web, this is what I do for print, right? And you got to have those different things. And then I kind of tie in that for social media, it's what you do in a magazine style, right? You got to have that certain style, 12 best ways to X, right? That kind of entices the social media audience to engage with you. And, just teaching them all these different things. And, when you're teaching thousands of journalists, about 2/3 or so are probably listening, the other third aren't, but we'll get there. We will get there.
Yeah, and you think about the lift in revenue potential by incremental increases in traffic. It's amazing. I've seen case studies of what you've done, the result of what you've done. It's absolutely amazing. I have a question for you. We didn't talk about this before, but you mentioned social media, and in that context, you know how, with doing keyword research, you can use Google Trends and that sort of thing, or Google's keyword tool to anticipate demand. What do you think about the idea of using social keywords? So what I mean there is, if there was a tool that you could use to work like Google Trends, except what it's doing is not crawling and analyzing news content, but it's crawling social content, i.e. tags, comments, and that sort of thing. Wouldn't that be useful to a journalist or a news publication if they were able to leverage not just trends and search keywords, but also social keywords that are buzzing up?
Absolutely. If we had a tool that could do, what Google Trends does, but for social media sites, that would be a huge help, because on the social media sites, it happens even faster than what's happening in the search indexes, right? Not a whole lot faster, but in the journalism world, 15 minutes, 30 minutes makes a huge difference, right? And if you can be that first one to match what people are looking for, or what tag is most popular for this particular minute, what's trending, etc., I think there's a huge opportunity for additional traffic and, I guess, increased audience as well, getting more people to see our stuff and hopefully become a user of our site and not just a user of Google looking for stuff that our site happens to have.
Awesome, thank you. So where can people find out more about you and all the smarts you have to share?
I'm very active on Twitter, of course, at Brent D. Payne. I do have my own website, brentdpayne.com. It is intermingled between personal things and SEO. I've actually asked Twitter several times, probably a dozen times at this point, if they'd rather me keep that stuff separate. And the response I keep getting back is around 70% would like to see that merged together still. So I'm keeping it merged together, and you'll get to know a little bit of who I am and some of the SEO stuff. So depending on what's going on, what time of day, etc. But I like that. I like being genuine online. I like being able to be who I am and have people that truly want to connect with me. And if they don't, then I understand that. I mean, I'm not trying to be everyone's friend, right? So,
right. Well, it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, it does, and I think you just get to know people better, right? I'll have a lot of people that tell me that, oh, you can't really be friends with people on social media, and I disagree, right? It's like, I just physically met Lee,
Yeah, we just met for the first time, finally, yeah.
Just met you like 10 minutes ago.
And we had a meet in Hong Kong.
Right. And so, but I've talked to you several times online, right? And you get that connection, you get that trust, you can build that relationship, and then it's just underscored more when you meet in person. So, yeah, BrentDPayne.com on Twitter, pretty much Brent D. Payne on any social media site, and then check out my website, BrentDPayne.com.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.